All right, everybody, welcome tonight and Happy New Year. Um, we are really, really excited to have you here with us tonight as we launch the first of our Dress for Success Allies for Change Fireside Chat for 2022. Thank you, those of you who are here with us, for supporting us and participating in this series. This month, we are featuring the topic of the power of service. Martin Luther King Day celebrates the life and contributions of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the history of the civil rights movement in the United States. A key component of this holiday is the Day of Service, which fosters his legacy by transforming the federal holiday into a national day of community service, grounded in his teachings of nonviolence and social justice. The idea was to make the holiday a day where people of all ages and backgrounds come together to improve lives, bridge social barriers, and move our communities closer. We created this forum to learn from one another, and each of you that is here tonight with us brings a unique perspective to this conversation. I am really pleased to first introduce my co-host, the awesome Willa Edgerton Chisler, who is a very talented coach and the facilitator of the Dress for Success, Steps to Success program, and many other things. And with us tonight are our guest speakers. We have Amy Sugarman, who is the very newly retired Assistant Director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Drew University. And I mean, newly retired, it just was Friday. So she hasn't even settled into this new walk of life yet. And also with us tonight is Andrew Walker, who is the founder of a phenomenal organization called 11 Plus. And he will be sharing with us tonight a little bit more about the organization and how it got started and what it does. So I guess we're going to kick off and just welcome everybody that's just joined us. And do you want to start, Willa, or would you like me to begin?
Sure, I'll start. Thanks, Kim. And Happy New Year, everybody. We're going to kind of weave in some of Dr. King's quotes, and then kind of ask the question of you on your thoughts about his messaging into where we are today. That sounds like a good conversation, Amy and Andrew? Yeah? All right. Congratulations, Amy. I'm jealous.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Dr. King said, one of his quotes was, "Not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great because greatness is determined by service. And you only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love to be of service." So my question to kick this off would be, how do you define social responsibility? And then coupled with that would be, why is it important for people, especially the next generation, right, to be of service, and what are the benefits? So Andrew or Amy, either one of you want to start that conversation?
Andrew, you want to take the first part? I'll take the second.
It doesn't matter, Amy. We'll be so deferential to each other, but if you either way, I defer.
All
okay,
right,
I'll jump in.
We'll start with you.
Okay.
So how do you define social responsibility?
So of course, I think social responsibility is, I think the official term is something like the duty to look after the environment and that we live in and society as a whole, which makes a lot of sense. I think that makes sense to me. But as I distill it to me personally, it's really ultimately about leaving the world a better place than you found it. And having that responsibility to, as little things from literally picking up a piece of trash on the sidewalk that somebody drops, to trying to change the world that we live in terms of across society. And I think it's a responsibility, it's a duty, because it's beholden to all of us to do something about this. And think of ourselves as cells in a body, and all the cells have to work together if we're going to keep that body alive. And so I think that's social responsibility is really about each of us embodying that and doing our part to keep moving forward and leaving the world a better place.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. And I think in my experience with our students and their work going out into their careers, is that they're seeking out corporations that may be for profit, but also have a sense of social responsibility to the world. And they're doing it by doing things like, they're certainly addressing the bottom line, but they're also socially responsible in the ways that they protect the environment. They have foundations associated with them that do, philanthropy and increase volunteerism among and give power to their employees to do social responsible activities. And that also, it's the individual, it's the corporation. And Drew University is so responsible. I mean, we feel it's a very big responsibility to social responsibility, because the university has a lot of resources in its intellectual personnel, its ability to do research, and the number of students at the school. We have a strong sense of responsibility to benefit our local communities and the world at large using our resources.
So Amy, let me just piggyback one little piece to what you just said about the students and this generation of volunteers. What do you see are the benefits for them to be engaged?
Wow. So I think that being engaged teaches them respect for others that are different from themselves, and empathy for other people. I think it's so important for them to learn that. And it builds their own self-esteem, their sense of confidence. And I think it's like, to what Andrew's point was, it's important for every individual to give back. So students and children really do have that sense, or can have that sense of responsibility. I think that it builds skills. Being engaged builds skills that are transferable anywhere. Things like skills like working in a diverse community with diverse people, learning how to work in a team, leadership skills, problem-solving skills. They get professional communication and professional etiquette skills. These are all transferable to anything that they're going to do. And they get networking experience, they learn what it means to be flexible. I mean, Kim, we've had so many Drew students work at Dress for Success. They need to be flexible. And it gives them a real ability to get out into the world and explore their interests and their career possibilities and career interests and other interests as well. So I think they get so much out of it.
Yeah.
And to add to that, and I can't generalize an entire generation, but I'll try. Certainly, I noticed, like, I'm not a millennial, but as I saw the millennials come into the workforce, and Amy, you referenced this, that it's an expectation of younger, or now they're a little bit older, in the millennial bracket, employees, that their organizations are working for the common good. I mean, there is an expectation. So I think it's that there's an intrinsic part of the benefit for them that they're getting by participating in those things. My daytime employer, I work for Ernst & Young, and we've changed our whole community and social outreach programming to align to what the millennials and now Gen Zs are expecting, which is lots of experiences helping lots of people. So instead of embedding yourself in one organization over a long period of time as a volunteer, there are these little quick hits. So they can go in for 3 hours and work with one organization doing one thing, and then go over to somewhere else and work tutoring students, and then another painting a building, or all these. So they're looking for these different experiences for their own personal fulfillment. So I think there are definitely tremendous benefit outcomes for them by doing this, but there's also a need that is really being expressed, and an expectation of employers that I hadn't seen before. And I think it's working to also, it's not just grassroots bottom up. I think it was August 2019, this collection of business leaders, and I can't remember the name of the forum. I think it's the Business Leader Forum or something like that. It was really a momentous occasion, because they came out and signed this big proclamation, and it was published in the Wall Street Journal, that said profits are no longer top priority. It's serving the communities in which we work, and went on to talk about that. And that's sort of, in my mind, I'm sure predated it, but ESG, so environment, society, and governance, which is this new barometer by which corporations are being measured. How effective are they achieving all these other goals beyond just profitability or ROI? So I think the world is as messed up as ever in some ways, but I think I have so much confidence in where we're headed, particularly with people coming up behind us.
I had a student recently, an alum, who, young woman who went into the gaming industry, which is unusual. And she's out in California now, and she called me on the phone, and she said, after we talked about what she was doing, she wanted to come back to Drew and do a workshop for our students so that they could understand how she and her new company is giving back. It's a for-profit gaming company. They are giving back to the world in different ways. And she wanted to help our current students understand what to expect, how to make that happen in careers that they were looking at. And I was just blown away. I said, oh, this is fabulous. She's coming to our doorstep to offer help. So she's already out there doing it. She's one of our Civic Scholars graduates. But you're so right, Andrew. They want to do more than make money. Even the ones that are making money still want to give back. They want to be in an organization that has those same values, shared values. It's so encouraging.
Thank you. I think they're great points. And I think, in the silver lining of all the disruption that we've experienced over the last few years, there is a silver lining, and you're starting to see a lot more of that kind of giving back and reaching out and helping each other. And I love that. So like Willa, I am going to preface my next set of questions with a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. He stated that every man must decide whether he will walk in the light of creative altruism or in the darkness of destructive selfishness. So my first question is, how has civic engagement changed your life? I'm going to start with you, Amy.
Well, civic engagement has changed my life in giving me so much more hope for this world. And in large part because of the power of mentorship and networking and bringing along those that are coming behind you. And I am continually so impressed with the people, the alums that we've been working with on, that have been out on any number of years, who are still coming back to the school and working with our current students. And the current students are, they're looking forward to mentoring when they leave, they're going to mentor the current Drew students. But it's developing a culture of civic engagement, the importance of it, and that no matter, sometimes you're going to be doing more work than other times, but you're always going to be doing something. And so that's probably it's given me more hope for this world. We're gonna be okay if we continue to help these younger people.
The Kim is frozen.
I think so.
Okay,
Well,
we back? Okay,
there
there
you
I
are.
am. So I was gonna say, before I go to Andrew, I've been fortunate enough to work with the Center for Civic Engagement at Drew. But I don't think a lot of other people know exactly what that is and what that means. What is the center? So Amy, if you wouldn't mind, can you tell us about the Center for Civic Engagement at Drew and talk with us about why it's important and what are some of the initiatives that they have?
Sure. So we connect education for action with action for the common good. That's our mission. And we do it in a number of ways with academic programs and also co-curricular, which is the non-academic piece of volunteerism. And so we support the civic engagement work of the university constituencies with our alums, with our current students, our faculty, and our staff. So we have a few signature programs that we've developed. We've been in existence for 11 years. I've been there for 8 of them. Our signature programs are our Civic Scholars, which is a 4-year program for students who come to Drew, who have a proven track record of volunteerism and civic engagement. They go through a 4-year program of special coursework, internships, and workshops, projects, and then graduate with a designation on their transcript, which is Civic Honors. 2 years ago, we transformed the Civic Scholars Program into a larger program called the Action Scholars Program, larger because we're bringing in double the number of students, but for a 2-year program. And those students are expanded beyond civic engagement to global studies and issues, and also entrepreneurship and business. So those students will do a 2-year program, but also have the opportunity to create an honors program, which that's still in the works. We haven't quite fleshed all of that out yet. But they too, we hope, will graduate with
Very
civic.
exciting.
So yeah, and we run community-based learning classes, which are service learning classes. A component is in the classroom, but then there's work done beyond the classroom in our communities with our community partners, addressing what they're learning in the classroom and applying it to the real world, bringing all that back into the classroom and reflecting on it. And then finally, a social entrepreneurship semester in New York City, which is run by an economics faculty member. And that's an 8-credit semester, 2 days of which are spent in the city working with nonprofits and advocacy groups. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Amy. Okay, so now, Andrew, I'm going to turn the question to you. Is how has civic engagement changed your life?
Okay, well, I guess I'll make it very personal. I've always been, since I was a child, I volunteered because of the example my parents have set. So it's always been part of the way I live my life. And I was in scouting, and that there's a huge volunteering component of that, involved through church or other sort of civic groups. And that's great. I mean, it's always been an important part of my life, and you do it. Again, it's just because it's what you do. It's not the value you're creating is the output you're looking for. But it's always been pretty reactive, to be honest. It's not. I haven't sat down and said, okay, what is on me to figure out how to, how am I personally going to drive change as opposed to responding to change? And Kim, you talked about the mayhem of the last couple of years, and I think a silver lining for me of the pandemic has been the lack of travel. I, in my day job, used to travel constantly, And it was just, and I was going around the world. So if I wasn't traveling, I was jet lagged. And I had no headspace or bandwidth to do anything else really. And suddenly I'm not traveling anymore. And I started to reflect on things that I wanted to do and things I've thought about for 10 years. Like, I want to set up an educational trust for disadvantaged students. And whole nother backstory, I was thinking about South African students who wanted to study in the US. And I started researching that and found out how hard it was and how much money you had to raise. And I was encouraged to think about something else. And then George Floyd was murdered. And it occurred to me that there are so many people in our own country that need this help. I need to change my focus. And so I was reflecting on, okay, what is my purpose and how do I define that? And in my whole life, it's, looking out for the little guy or the person who was getting picked on the playground, or whatever need there was, I had this compulsion to go help. And so I articulated my personal purpose is to champion the underdog, whatever shape that takes. And with that mindset, I looked to with the overlay of wanting to help disadvantaged students in particular, what can I do? And it was a conversation with a friend that just like a light bulb, the idea for this 11 Plus organization that I can tell you about later came into my head, but it's totally energized me in a way that I didn't, and given me so much benefit. It is funny, when I was a younger man, even as an older guy, I would always think, what am I going to do to get rich? Like, what's my great idea? And I finally had an idea, and I'm getting rich in ways I never imagined. It just doesn't happen to be financially rich, but it's so much better than that. And so I think sort of the feeling of service is, I remember in college, I had one philosophy course. It was horrible. I was terrible at it. Most of it went over my head, but I remember the definition of altruism from a philosophical standpoint is doing something because it needs to be done, not because you get anything out of it. And there's a lot of stuff people do every day that is purely altruistic, but I have to admit what I'm doing, I'm getting so much out of it myself. I probably can't call it altruism. Sure, it's a service, but it's giving me energy. It's charging my batteries. So I'm getting, it really has changed my life in that way, in a very focused, intentional way that maybe was missing before.
Excellent. Andrew, you mentioned.
Oh, she froze again.
Yeah.
She's going to ask you, actually, Andrew, about 11 Plus.
Okay.
And how you create the opportunities. Sure. And there she's back.
I'm back for a minute. We'll see. I was
telling him about 11 Plus.
Yes, my intro into that was that, he mentioned George Floyd. And if I'm honest with this group, that's what started these fireside chats. Willa and I went through, for me, a very painful and really deeply personal learning experience to understand what privilege was and to understand how I could do more. And we had such an honest kind of moment with each other that and because of our honesty with one another, we said, we really need to build on this, and we need to invite other people to the table and have these conversations. And that was what birthed the fireside chats. So I know that for you, Andrew, you had mentioned that your founding of 11 Plus kind of started with what happened with George Floyd, and that you wanted to do more. So yes, the question is, if you can please share with us what it is and how you create opportunities for underrepresented young adults.
Sure, absolutely. So 11 Plus is actually shorthand. Our legal name is Elevate to Even Plus, but I thought it was easier to condense that to 11 Plus. And I also like the reference to Spinal Tap. If you ever saw the movie, their speakers go up to 11 and they ask why. It's because it's better than 10. So we're 11 Plus. And it's all about leveling the playing field for disadvantaged students of color from low-income backgrounds, and getting them to even and beyond. So that's the plus. We're trying to find a way to give them opportunities that don't come easily or often just aren't available at all. And how do we do that? We find and fund internship opportunities for these students with nonprofit partners. And the nonprofit partners will host the internships, and there's some criteria behind all of this, but it gives these students access to something that the way our society is wired, they wouldn't normally. So the paradigm shift that we're changing here, the paradigm shift is in a typical situation, this is another broad brush comment. So there's going to be a lot of instances where this does not apply, but generally speaking, the model for nonprofits to staff internships is children, grandchildren of board members, or children or grandchildren of donors are often provided with access to opportunities with nonprofits. Now, the whole Drew University thing is again, completely different animal. But in this dynamic, what you find is it's the two things. One, it's students who have the networks built in. So it took some wealth or connections through a board member or a donation to get the access, and underserved students won't typically have that. And the other phenomenon with this is usually these, not exclusively, but very often these are unpaid internships. And so the students who need these experiences, even if they can access them, they can't afford to work for free. So our idea was, okay, let's find these opportunities and let's pay the students $15 an hour so that they get meaningful pay for meaningful work. And the host organizations do provide some really interesting work. It's not, they're not allowed to do filing or just answering the phone or making coffee. They have to have a project. They have to have something that at the end of the summer they're really proud of. And with that, they have a mentor inside their hosting organization who gives them some coaching along the way, you know, learning as they go, whether it's something about their attire, which we had in a couple instances last year, or just looking at how they did a project and what might they do differently next time to make it better, so that they can learn the value of, you know, of having that experience. And so we're giving them the skills that they wouldn't have in terms of working in a professional environment. We're giving them relationships and networks through the people they're meeting at work. And we're giving them a feeling of accomplishment and pride that the work they did is valued and appreciated. And so we've been in existence for just a year. We had a really successful first summer. We piloted it in New Jersey with 10 students. And based on the success of that, we're now looking to scale it quickly, tenfold, to support 100 students this coming summer. So that's the story of 11 Plus.
And for those of you on the call, I'm very excited to announce that Dress for Success Northern New Jersey will be partnering with 11 Plus, and we are really looking forward to getting some interns this summer. So thank you for that, Andrew.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That's wonderful work. That's absolutely
Good work.
terrific. I'm so happy to hear this.
Yeah, that's really good work. That kind of triggers something that another Dr. King quote that talks about, we must use time creatively in the knowledge that the time is always right to do what is right. So your timing, Andrew, is perfect, right? It is, this is the time. And so with that, we're going to ask this last question before we move and give folks on the call an opportunity to ask questions. Both of your organizations do work in social responsibility, civic engagement, all of those things, and we've talked about the youth. How do you see us breaking the cycle? If you were to say to us as individuals or people in organizations, how do we break the cycle of social and economic inequality that exists in our community? What can we do? Because you're seeing what these students are experiencing. What do you see as something that we can do? And I see, Amy, you're nodding your head. So
Oh my
we'll start
gosh.
with you.
Well, they're big problems that are national in scope, but you know, I think providing safety nets for our families with affordable childcare, healthcare, family leave policies, These are the responsibilities of our government and of our companies. Housing affordability is huge, especially where we are right now in Morris County. Affordable education. One thing that we've been trying to do at Drew is have a pathways program for our community college students who are able to go to community college and transfer over after 2 years. And that is a much more affordable option for students. We also have a very generous financial aid policy and are doing work in diversification. We have 44% of our students are BIPOC. And part of the way we were able to do that is go SAT optional. Again, that's, you know, the more well-resourced students, young people have more ability to get help with the SATs. There's a very strong correlation. I think providing assistance for our students to work in the trade schools as well. But I mean, these are all things that we can work with our local, state government and vote in the elections, bring people into the power that, you know, bring people into public policy and power that can actually implement some of these larger things. So that's what I've been always working towards.
All right.
It Drew.
Thank you. Thank you. So Andrew, and
I
now
agree
you
with-
started a whole organization. I can't do that right now. But what are some other things you can recommend us doing?
Yeah, so I think as an individual, I agree with everything Amy said, absolutely. And looking at it from the individual standpoint, I can go in a couple different directions. And without trying to take up too much airtime here, I will say you need to do the work, as people say, do the work. And do the work is investing in yourself and doing the reading and the research to sort of understand, having the conversations with people to understand all the different perspectives on inequality, for example. And I can tell you that this is now available nationally. It's a very local program. I think it's run out of some communities around Summit called Dialogue Circles on Race. And this is what I did. So George Floyd got murdered. First thing I thought was, I need to do something. What do I do? And my first reaction was, I need to stop making statements about seeing police pull over people of color in my community and why are they always doing that, and shaking my head and saying to my kids, oh, look, here it's happening again. My first act was to try to find out why is it happening. So made a couple of calls, got in touch with the city council liaison to the police. She was all over this issue and she told me about it. And long story short, it wasn't racial profiling, it was technology. Technology was pinging license plates and pulling over cars with infractions. Typically, they were unregistered vehicles by people who driven by people who could no longer afford insurance, so they couldn't renew their registrations, and they were driving cars illegally, getting tickets and fines, and potentially going to jail because they couldn't afford insurance. But what is that? That's not racism in the police force. That's systemic racism. That's the system, the infrastructure. The technology is picking on the people who are, needing those safety nets. And the answer is not, oh, well, let's pay for their insurance. It's let's change their lives so that they can actually afford the insurance. That conversation got me turned on to this program in my community called Dialogue Circles on Race, which now, again, they're accepting students everywhere. And I can't multitask, but when somebody else is talking, I'll look up an email address. They're running another program in March. You can email them and say you're interested in enrolling. But it's a 5-week program. They assign about an hour to 2 hours of reading before each class. And then you go online for 2 hours to have incredibly mind-altering conversations with a whole cross-section of people, whether it's their political views, their orientation, whether it's their race, whatever it is. You get this cross-section, and I learned so much about what is under the surface. We may even get used to looking at it, but it absolutely exists, is the way our societies are wired to ultimately keep certain people, and it's primarily people of color, and specifically as Black people, below the waterline. And it's not in every instance, but you can see there's 100 years of legalized oppression, followed by all kinds of rules and regulations and redlining in our communities, which probably most people have heard about now. But it weaves its way through down to what can we do as individuals. And this is where I was going. Sorry, I did take a lot more airtime, but I'm very passionate about this. So there's the concept of restitution, or reparations, excuse me. So we should be paying Black Americans for the sins of slavery now. And as a very open-minded individual, I never understood that. Like, generations have passed since slavery ended. Why are we talking about this now? And I learned through this course that it is long overdue, but it doesn't have to be a big government check. We can all individually, in our own ways, make reparations, and that's just by buying from Black-owned businesses, or the examples in one of the readings was, you can just buy a coffee for a Black person and say, and I would feel awkward doing that, but that personally, I wouldn't know how to articulate how that was playing out, but that was one of the suggestions in the reading. But it's about listening and appreciating, walking in people's shoes, and trying to understand how can you help make an advantage for someone else who really, just because of the color of the skin, the circumstances they were born in, have an uphill battle that certainly I, as that poster child for white privilege, I'm middle-aged, white, heterosexual, college-educated male, and I think it's more on me than pretty much anyone else to do something about this, but it's something we can all do individually. So do the work and then figure out what are those little things you can do day to day. And I actually have pulled out a cheat sheet here of a couple of things, like talk to your family and friends about it. Don't just ignore it. Like, have a dinner conversation with people about, if you haven't already. Give people with Black people or people of color a platform, invite them in to have conversations in a community group, or just have a dialogue with them. So, and then it goes down the list to, like, you can sit in on protests, attend a protest. Before I started 11 Plus, I did the March on Washington because I was in the middle of the dialogue circles on race conversations. And it was just, I was there as an ally, and it was a great moment for me, but it was me also telling the community that was physically surrounding me and out in the broader world that people like me do care, and people like me do want to make a difference. And I think that in itself actually means something. So I will cool down now, but there's my very long response.
Your passion
Thank
comes
you.
through very strongly,
Yeah.
and thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that with us, because that passion is contagious, and that's why we invited you here tonight to share that with us and inspire all of us. So thank you very much. Before we go any further, I think I'm going to open it up for questions from our audience. I'm sure they've heard an awful lot tonight, and they're probably going to have some more insight and questions for you. So I will turn it to our awesome audience. We're going to have a bunch of shy people now tonight, huh?
It's 2022. Don't be shy. Hey, Debbie.
Okay, I won't be shy. Let's see. Who had the quote? Oh, I'm good. Who had the quote of the Martin Luther King quote, Jr. quote about light and dark?
That was me.
Okay, so I want to start with that quote, and I want to ask, the two of you, Amy and Andrew, I think you've talked about changing people, but I would be interested in knowing how you take people who exist in the dark and change them to see the light. And I'm not talking about, going to Drew or doing 11 plus, but I want to hear when I meet someone who, and I'm not even sure, I'm not sure what darkness would mean, but the whole notion I think that you listed was a selfishness. If we can equate darkness with selfishness, which is, I think, what you said, and the whole notion of, social justice or social responsibility is about looking outward and not looking inward. So can you help me understand when you meet people like this, because there are people like this, what can we say? What do you do? What is your product? I'm a coach, so I would love to hear, how do you go about making the steps to do the transformation, or to, let's say, do the transformation? Because I can sit there and tell you what my perspective is, but as a coach, I might be trying to get people to see the light as opposed to living in the darkness. So what are your thoughts about how you help make transformation like that on a one-on-one basis?
I think I would have a different day job if I knew how to do that, honestly. I think that's a great question, but I don't have a silver bullet. There are plenty of people I know in my life living in the dark, and you try to engage them. And sometimes they don't want to come out of the dark, or whatever, the blinders are on so tightly, they can't come off. And the way philosophically, the way I look at that is, I can just let them know how I feel and what my beliefs are and my principles, and then demonstrate through my actions what that actually means. But Amy, I don't know if you've cracked that one. I haven't.
No, but I haven't. And it's certainly not in my expertise, but I've always had the feeling that if you can plant some seeds, you just don't even know when that will actually start to grow. And we're not going to change somebody overnight, but to try to have open dialogue and let them speak, have a big heart. And I find it, we all have had personal interactions, I'm sure, where that's happened. But it's leaving a window open and hoping that, in the words that you're speaking, as Andrew said, explain to them, give them an idea of what that light is, that maybe enough times that they will actually change their attitude in a small way. It doesn't have to be a large way. It just has to be the direction, not the speed or the incline.
And I think another thing, and this, playing off of that, is a mistake that I have made and probably will continue to make if I get the buttons pushed the wrong way, is to marginalize those people and just to ignore them. And part of the job for us is to just keep staying engaged and I have to admit, I have good friends I've known my whole life who have serious issues in this space, but individually they're good people and they mean well and they have big hearts. They're just whatever wiring they have. And I thought, I need to stop talking to them, because I know they don't say it to me, but they say things to other people that just are completely at odds with my own value system. But I figured if I give up on them, then I've given up on them and there's no hope. Whereas at least, I don't see them often, but when we get together, I can plant a seed here or there. The thing that's really cool is they gave me a not small donation to 11 plus to keep us going. So there's a minor
That's
victory.
a start.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that and
She's frozen again.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. Someone else have a question?
there I am.
I know. I just asked if anybody else has a question or a comment.
Peggy has her hand up.
Hi. Can I just ask, Andrew, I think you were the one who mentioned starting locally. And I find that a lot of times people have the best of intentions and great ideas and whatnot, but they can't think locally. They think globally, and then the problem becomes so enormous to them that they can't they can't even.
Uh-oh, you're on mute, Peggy. There, okay, there you go.
Okay, sorry. So they become kind of almost caught up in this inability to move forward because they see the problem so big. How do you take those folks and focus them locally and then kind of weave in the global issues for them so that it becomes something they can act on rather than something that's so enormous they can only talk about it?
And I think you just have to make it personal and just talk about, recognize that there are huge problems that none of us individually can solve. There are things we can do to progress those big, huge problems, but put it in the context of, just as you said, what can they do personally to take action? And maybe people don't see how those little actions add up, but they really do. So I think it's just trying to put it into a different context for them. I don't, Amy, do you have a better response there?
No, and just something to add about the work that we do locally and that our students do. We focus on huge issues like immigration, and we focus on huge issues like food justice and food insecurity, but we provide opportunities for students to work locally. For instance, we work with the International Rescue Committee, working with students, helping tutor students and work with families. That provides a local action that teaches them and makes them feel as if they're making a difference in this larger, huge problem or challenge. Food justice and food insecurity, that's, a worldwide enormous problem. But we're able to work with Morristown Neighborhood House, assisting in the kitchen there and providing hot meals to children who wouldn't necessarily otherwise have them. Working with in various other areas with local community partners like Grow It Green, that provides produce and educational programs around food and nutrition and healthy eating in our schools. So I think just finding a way to work in a local area that addresses a much larger one helps focus and narrow the challenge to make it manageable.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you.
It's a big issue because, like, to your point, Amy, when you're talking about healthy eating and food, but there's no grocery stores in the community, right, for them to get healthy meals. Or just like now, they just talked about all these tests that are being mailed out to families. Well, if you don't have internet access to
Right.
order the tests, you're not going to get them. And then, you're going to have a phone situation set up a week later. These are the things that, the digital divide is another issue. And I think, to your point, Andrew, you had also made was us being conscious and raising our awareness about these things, right? And how do we change that? And who do we need to pick up the phone and call or advocate for or talk to about the issues that we don't necessarily see is correct.
That's right.
I think there's a lot that, that we can all do. For me, the message tonight is to focus on those seeds and those little things and the little actions that we can do. And the more of those that we plant, you know, the better off we'll be. And if that's our message to people, is just to take a little step forward, we'll make our communities a lot better. So thank you for that. Does anyone else have any questions? What a quiet group. We had I think it's because our speakers really dove in deep tonight and gave us a lot to think about. I know I will be doing a lot of self-reflection and, you know, hopefully, you know, continue to live a better life and to make other people's lives better as well. Willa, is there anything else you'd like to add?
You know, thank you, Kim. I think Amy and Andrew gave us some good food for thought, again, to think about where we are and what we want to do in 2022. Altruism and volunteering and doing this work has been my passion for many, many years. Because that's the service you pay for being here. And I think it's important that we do that in little ways, in big ways, in our own little corner of the world. A friend of mine always said, brighten the corner where you are. You can't do it everywhere, but you could do it somewhere. And so I think that that's a very important thing that we have to think about as individuals, and don't say we can't do anything. We all can do something. So
Right.
I thank you so much for your time. And I just sent the connection to get to you on LinkedIn. And Amy, enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
I'll be looking for great things from you while you're retired now.
I know I'm not staying quiet.
Yeah, Amy, if you
And
want, I need help. I have Anthony Gonzalez is on the call. He's a volunteer with 11 Plus from California. He's in Oakland, by the way. So
Oh, welcome.
he's awesome.
Hello.
So Anthony, it's so cool to see you here. Thank you. But Amy, if you're bored, call me because I can always use more help.
I'm not bored yet, but oh my goodness. So no, I'm actually right now in Long Island helping get my partner's mom settled in assisted living and take care of getting her house ready for sale. So
Got your hands full.
I retired and I moved to Long Island, said no one ever.
Well,
Oh my
thank you
goodness.
so much. Thank you all very, very much. And again, Happy New Year to everybody. I hope that the group will be able to join us next month for our fireside chat. And we look forward to continuing to hear great things from both organizations. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
this
very much. Thanks for having
opportunity.
me.
Really
Thank
great.
you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Thank you.
All right, Kim, I'm still here.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.